right, let's go. Tonight we have episode 9 of Masti with Satvik Saini with a special friend of mine and coworker, Michael Condon. And he's one of the most knowledgeable people about the Joe Rogan podcast. He's a big follower, probably person who knows the most about him, and he follows Spotify as well. So we're going to talk about the monumental deal that just took place between Spotify and Joe Rogan, and then the podcasting industry as a whole, plus a little bit about free speech. We'll have him join.
Yo, am I in?
Michael, what's up, dude?
What up? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Of course. Sound great, man.
Thank you. I like the facial hair and the hair.
Oh, thanks. I'm hoping someday I can have like real facial hair, but this will do for the time being.
Rogan does the trick. That's all you gotta use.
That's what I've been told, yeah.
All right, dude. So as I was telling people before I got you on, you probably, out of all the people I know, you probably know Joe Rogan the best. And then you also follow Spotify quite a bit. You like
Yeah.
like their product. And a deal just took place between Joe Rogan and Spotify, where Joe Rogan is reportedly taking above $100 million to take his content and podcast exclusively to Spotify. Walk us through this deal.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, when people think of like Joe Rogan and his podcast, like a lot of people have some pretty strong opinions either way, or they don't really care about Joe Rogan at all, which is fine. But I started like listening to his podcast like way back in like 2016, I think, when I was doing this internship. It was like the only thing I could sneak over their internet. So like I was playing it on like Apple Music, and I love Joe Rogan to death. Don't get me wrong, but he's not like a hero of mine. I just like really liked his podcast because it's similar to your podcast. Like you're talking raw and unedited, and there's no plan for the conversation. It's not like really an interview. It's more just like two people, recording what they talked about for like 3 hours. And so like the real big benefit of that is you can get people who kind of get misrepresented in the news, or you don't really know a lot about them. But if they talked for 3 hours straight, you can gather a lot more info. So I like tried to watch every episode that he had for like, I don't know, 3 years, but it got exhausting because, some of the guests just aren't interesting,
True. And they're also like, you gotta be. Can you watch an entire episode or listen to an entire episode?
Yeah.
Interesting.
The Elon Musk ones, I've listened to those whole ones. Every time Chris D'Elia's on, I'll listen to the whole thing. But yeah, a lot of times I'll just put it on in the background, and 20 minutes in, I can kind of like gauge where this is going to go, and I'll bail or stay. But yeah, there's been a couple of episodes where I'm like, oh my God, and I just drop everything to listen to what the people are talking about. But yeah, I always kind of hated the fact that it was on YouTube, because like it kind of like didn't really fit what Joe Rogan's podcast was about. And
What do you think?
well, like, so the whole like Joe Rogan experience, like the brand of it is, I want to hear what this person has to say completely raw and unedited. And I also want to make sure that everybody knows that it's raw and unedited. And like the proof of this is you can go look up dumb things Joe Rogan said live that he can't take back, which is hilarious because when he's about to do that every time. Like it's like Elon Musk will be talking about some crazy AI stuff, and then Joe Rogan starts talking about monkeys on bicycles. Dumb shit all the time. But YouTube has its own brand, and I think in the early days of YouTube, they're more like, we want to make a tool where you can upload video content to the internet easily. And of course, like people started doing that and it worked really well, but every once in a while you'll get some creep putting up child porn or, a snuff video or whatever
Yeah.
the hell.
Hmm.
And, at that point you kind of got to decide like, what is our business and our product going to be about? And so you pull that type of stuff down, right? Um, so yeah, like you make like a line in the sand of what we're going to be about and what we're not going to be about. And the Joe Rogan experience, since their whole thing is like, I want to hear what this person has to say, no matter what type of person they are, and no matter how stupid they're saying. I want people to be able to access this, And for a long time, it like worked really well on YouTube, but you can't show the videos that they're talking about, which makes sense because of, legalities.
Sure.
But when they kind of started doing the thing where they would demonetize or even like censor content that contradicted
Their vision.
coronavirus, yeah, then it's like, um, if they pull that down, his podcast shouldn't really be up there anymore because that's not what it's about. So it like feels weird that he's going to Spotify because I don't really associate Spotify with podcasts, but I think like in his case, it actually like makes a ton of sense because he's complained a million times. He's like, I want to be able to hear everything people have to say, and I don't want any type of censoring, and it's hard on YouTube. And so then he gets this like $100 million offer, like, why not kill two birds with one stone, right?
True. So as far as like, so back up a little bit. So as far as why you listen to Rogan is because it's raw and edited. Because the reason I like him so much is because of, first of all, like Musk or Jordan Peterson or a lot of these like pretty provocative guys and that touch up a lot of sensitive topics.
Yeah.
And bringing them on and like Musk smoking weed is just like wildly entertaining.
Oh yeah, it's
Like having
insane.
comedians on or these types of people, that's the reason I like him. He's not really afraid of the blowback per se with some of that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And the other cool thing is like, some of these guests he have, like, they're not like one type of person. Like he's had on Alex Jones, but he's also had on Bernie Sanders.
True.
So it's like,
Exactly.
and he likes both of those people. Like I think he's like genuinely friends with both of those guys. And if
Mhm.
those two guys were in the same room, I don't think they'd agree on anything, right? So he's definitely got like some type of like open-mindedness about him. Um,
Oh, for sure. This
yeah.
is part of his appeal.
Like obviously he leans on like certain issues one way or the other, but um, it's like kind of a problem if like people are only getting all their info about the world through like a, filtered lens.
Hmm.
And so like I don't know, before Bernie Sanders was on his podcast, I like was pretty indifferent about him to be honest. Like I didn't hate him or like him or anything. Like I just thought he was kind of like a crazy old dude. But then like when he was actually on Joe Rogan's podcast and I watched like the whole hour and a half of it, I was like, oh dang, like this guy like actually is a politician driven by a moral compass. Like he really believes in all the things he talks about,
Hmm.
all that stuff. And so, when you stumble upon something like that, you realize how many people you've kind of had misconceptions about and you just never got to hear everything they had to say.
True. And I think that's where like Joe Rogan is the epitome of like the shift in society where we've had of how we digest information, like shifted like what we want to hear, from where do we want to hear and from who. And like that being an authentic source is just so much more credible. Like in that example you just gave, Bernie Sanders, like he also had Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard, the other
Hmm.
candidates, and I listened to all three of those, and that made me empathize with those candidates way more than like some stupid freaking debate on
Yeah, for
CNN
sure.
for like them coming on 2 minutes. If you did that with every candidate, I would love for that. I would chew that up any day.
Oh, yeah. No, like the whole like structure of a political debate doesn't even make any sense. Like, what, you have like 10 minutes to say everything you view about a whole country and your like whole plan to fix all that? Like, dude, that's garbage, man. And then they like have all these people writing what they can and can't say like behind the
Exactly.
scenes. It's just like inefficient. But if all those people were like in the same room and they talked for like 4 hours, you know, they might be like on the same page about a lot of stuff. Who knows?
True, the context there is huge, especially like they'll take turn in the like the debate where like they just dick on one person for a night and then go from there. It's just all reality TV. But
Oh
that
yeah.
a very humble, honest conversation and like a lot of context behind the ideas, which is all what conversation's about. Which I think Joe
Right,
Rogan
for
really
sure. Yeah. And I don't know. It's kind of a bummer that not a lot more people watch him because, like, you know, you'll see a clip of the show and he says something like totally stupid. Like, it's like, dude, what are you doing? But then that's all they ever saw about his show. So they're
yeah.
like, I'm not going to watch that. Which is fine. I mean, it's definitely not for everybody. And, you know, some people call Joe Rogan the like Oprah Winfrey of white dudes, which 100% perfect description. But his podcast, that's like a separate idea, you know?
True, especially because like well, if you think about the power of Rogan's podcast, like when I think Rogan said something about, I didn't think he actually endorsed Bernie, but he said like, I like the dude, I would vote for him, some type of deal. And Sanders actually used that in his campaign, like a freaking,
Wow, really?
like a fucking ad, seriously.
Dang,
And then
that's insane.
because then Rogan got a lot of backlash because like Ben Shapiro and all these like far right guys were like,
Hmm.
Joe Rogan's canceled, and Joe Rogan's like, fuck this, man, I didn't sign up for any of this because
Yeah, it's total bullshit.
he's just talking to dudes, having a good time, and then like he just ended up saying, which is like a pretty warm endorsement per se. Like he just ended up saying, "Oh, I like Bernie as a dude. This is someone I might vote for," which is
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, no, it's totally insane how like people can get trouble that quick because it's like Ben Shapiro and Joe Rogan are like friends. So
Yeah,
like I
Shapiro's been
feel
on it.
like they would like let things float, you know?
True, because Shapiro's also been his podcast.
Yeah, I think he's been on there like 3 times now or something.
Interesting.
Um, but yeah, it's just like crazy. I kind of like in a weird way like sympathize with Joe Rogan a little bit because he's kind of in the middle about a lot of like different things and you know, if he's friends with someone like Alex Jones, but he also knows Alex Jones is like insane and
True.
like should definitely not be saying certain things. Like, you know, it's kind of tricky that society would pressure him to like not have him on the podcast or like not be friends with him or anything. And he just, you know, gives him the middle finger and has him on, and it's like some of the funniest content ever. Like, I
Isn't
don't
that
know
one
if you've,
of the most
huh?
liked episodes? Isn't that one of the most liked episodes?
Yeah, dude, I think the second time Alex Jones was on Joe Rogan was like the greatest thing I've seen on the internet ever. Like it was 4 hours and 15 minutes. I think it was his longest episode. I watched the whole thing and that dude, he's like insane. And like Joe knows he's insane, but he also knows like there's something about him he likes. So he tries to like guide him into talking about that. And the dude just like can't stay focused. It's incredible. But yeah, I don't know. I like worry if he stayed on YouTube, like what would 2023 look like if he had Alex Jones on? Would like they even let a guest like that be on his podcast? Like someone like that has already been deplatformed a bunch of times, and I don't know. It's
Wait,
just tricky.
give us a little context on Alex Jones because I actually haven't seen that episode, but I know about him a little bit. He's like a conspiracy theorist, has
Yeah,
like wild hoopla theories.
yeah. I like, dude. I don't really buy anything he ever says. But basically, he started this. I don't know if this was the first thing he did, but he started this website called InfoWars, and he believed that like everybody was getting like fake news that was left leaning, and so he wanted to like get the truth out there.
Interesting.
And then it kind of spiraled like way out of control, and he started like talking about these weird like globalist societies running the world, and he said like people were putting things in our water that were turning frogs gay and shit. And it just got like
Like,
way out of control. Like this dude's like somebody who's wearing like aluminum foil on his head. Um, and so like one of the like really controversial things he said was um, he didn't think the Sandy Hook massacre actually happened. Um,
oh, interesting.
yeah, and he like legitimately believed that the government wanted to take our guns away so that they faked all the information about that, and that wasn't a real thing that happened. And this got like way like he got in so much trouble. He got deplatformed on Spotify. I think he got banned from YouTube and some other stuff, which of course just pissed him off. Like he's never gonna stop. But Joe Rogan brought him on the podcast because Joe Rogan knew him from like the early 2000s. Like they were friends somehow. And he's like, Alex, I love you, but like some of the stuff you say, man, like what are you doing? And so he has like Alex trying to explain himself, but the dude's just insane. So he goes down all these like crazy rabbit holes and everything. But the episodes he has him on, they talk about all his conspiracy theories, and he brings on this other guy named Eddie Bravo, who's this jiu-jitsu trainer for the UFC, who also has all these crazy conspiracy theories.
Interesting.
And oh my God, dude, it's a cocaine rush of a podcast, man.
So this guy's like way off the walls, but he's just kind of justifying some of his crazy cuckoo ideas in a weird way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think he's been right about like one conspiracy out of like 1,000. But some of the stuff that he says is just like out of control. And
Oh, I
when he started talking about the Sandy Hook stuff, he like got deplatformed and censored and everything, which is kind of like the beginning era of like this whole censorship, free speech debate, you know?
Interesting. So like definitely bringing him on could offend a lot of people, and like understandably so because of
Oh,
his
for sure.
very. Hmm.
Yeah. And I'm like, there's other people like that, like Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro, Milo Yiannopoulos, like those names are like forbidden to some people, and they've been on the podcast before. Um, so it's like, I don't know, where do you bridge the gap of like, what do I censor and what do I not censor? Because some of these people are saying things that are like dangerous for society, but it's also like you don't want to censor someone without like a good reason, because then you're just controlling everybody.
True. Because then if there's just a small group of people or tech companies like YouTube, or I mean Google and like Twitter and Facebook controlling the information,
Yeah,
whoever's making those decisions, what's censored or not, is then it's hard to make. Or whoever
yeah,
is making those decisions is in a tough boat, to say the least.
yeah. I don't envy those people at all. Like the Jack Dorseys and Mark Zuckerbergs and stuff. Like they could make a lot of decisions that would change the world like today, but they got to figure out like when do I implement my beliefs? When do I not implement my beliefs?
Hmm.
Should I even like think about, censoring this type of thing or this type of thing? Is free speech in general what people want? And I don't know, man. That's a tough spot to be in.
Sure, and that's the thing with Joe Rogan, right? Because he's an individual opinion having another discussion with another individual who has many open, like very various types of opinions. That's why I guess the whole open-mindedness comes into play. Even bringing on someone as controversial as Alex Jones, I guess speaks to his brand, like you were saying. So, which is
Yeah.
interesting. Where do you draw
And
the line? Who would you not bring on as a guest?
if
Even
I
Joe
had a
Rogan.
podcast,
Yeah, even
or
as like if you were Joe Rogan, like would you draw the line with anyone?
oh my God, dude, I don't know. I've actually never really thought about that. Because like I'm like, who would be super controversial that like almost nobody would like to have? My first thought is like, I don't know, like the head of the KKK or something.
Yeah,
But it's also like, if he brought that person on, it would give them a little bit of time to talk and give him an opportunity to convince them that like the things they believe are like
yeah,
not cool at all, and like, maybe get to the root cause of why somebody would believe stuff like that. But it's also like, people aren't going to take the time to watch all that if they already made a judgment of like Joe Rogan brings KKK man on
true.
podcast. Like they might
Oh
just
yeah,
say,
that's
fuck Joe Rogan.
no. I see what you're saying. Like even Joe Rogan's untouchable. Like I don't think he would bring it on. I wouldn't bring it on someone like
Oh,
that.
he definitely wouldn't. Like there's definitely some people he has said no to bringing on. And Kanye was actually one of those people,
He said
which,
no to Kanye.
yeah. So what happened with that? And this broke my heart because Kanye is like, I really want to have him on Joe Rogan because I want him to sit down and talk about like how crazy he is and
Mhm.
all that. And so Joe Rogan reached out to him and he's like, dude, I want to have you on the podcast. I feel like there's a lot of news that isn't true about you or may be true. And I just like really want to have like a raw, open conversation with you to see what you think about the world. And so what Joe does is before a podcast, he takes the person out to dinner so that they're like comfortable with him and, you know, just like a friendly gesture.
Did not know that.
Yeah. And so after he doesn't do this every single time. Like sometimes it's just a phone call, but he
Yeah.
likes to talk to the people before the podcast, like days in
Yeah.
advance. And so he did this with Kanye. And after talking with him, he's like, well, I take back a lot of the things I said about Kanye. He's an interesting dude. He's really creative. And then he never had him on. And so like people were like, what happened with the Kanye thing? And he slipped out in this stand-up that somebody was recording. And he was like, the real honest truth with Kanye is I'm afraid if I had him on, he couldn't articulate his words in a way that would make him look good. And so he'd eventually say something that would get him in trouble or lose fans or just get him back in the news. So I felt it would be better for Kanye if I didn't have him on the podcast.
Interesting. He made that judgment call.
Yeah. Which is like pretty crazy because I'm like, damn, I would have thought Kanye would just like bail or something. But, you know, there are like guests that Joe Rogan will not have on the podcast. But I think like the reasons for not having guests on are probably like pretty specific and individualistic to that guest and everything.
That's actually very interesting because I think after the Bernie Sanders podcast episode, he denied to like Pete, Warren, and a couple of the other Democratic candidates that reached out to him to have him on the podcast.
Yeah. He also said that he would never have Hillary on. And I think I could totally be wrong about this, so don't call me, but I think he said something like he was worried if he had Hillary on that Hillary was so good at like political conversation that she could carry on a 3-hour conversation and it wouldn't be real. Which I thought was like really interesting because it's like, you know, how good are some politicians at just keeping their brand and never letting their real character get out?
Whoa, that's actually fascinating.
Yeah.
But you didn't think Bernie Sanders or Andrew Yang or Tulsi Gabbard were to that caliber? Not caliber, but like in the way.
No, I mean, I think he like is genuinely like, you know, I want to hear what these people have to say. And he brought him on, and I'm sure he enjoyed himself. Like those were actually like some of my favorite podcasts is when he brings a politician on.
True. I like
it's like,
context too.
Yeah, because then you're like, oh my God, I totally get what this guy's saying now, you know, and I totally get why this guy believes this certain thing and why he doesn't believe this certain thing. And then sometimes like they even like change your mind on certain issues, which is like really like the core thing that we need to get really good at is like if two people disagree and you know one of them is right and one of them is wrong, how do you identify who that is? And like, you know, is it worth trying to convince people one way or the other? You know, that's like a whole big thing. But things like Joe Rogan really need to stay like completely uncensored. So like we can use that as a piece of info for like what someone is actually trying to say, you know?
No, true. And then use that, and then you make the decision whether it's right or wrong, depending on your viewpoint. So you get the
Yeah, exactly.
unfiltered convo, or whatever the case, not some bullshit being spewed at you on the TV for 2 minutes with a certain narrative, with a lot of collective, like, because think about it, Joe Rogan, like it's only his opinion. There's no one behind him, like, trying to get him to filter anything he's trying to say. Like, Jamie isn't like, yo, Rogan, chill with that, or anything.
Yeah.
It's like NBC and a lot of these news channels, like, it's a collective opinion, right? You like, oh, we have to take this narrative, take this bit, so.
Yeah, well, not only that, but those, like, they have, like, a direct mission, right? Like, it's like a company like Fox News, they need to make sure that that specific type of person is happy, and they're going to keep watching it. And then NBC has their own type of demographic they want to make happy. But, like, podcasts like this one, there's not really, like, a direct mission, you know? It's just, like, a conversation. And that's where, like, the raw, real info is, you know?
And I appreciate that because you're right. Like people are just Fox News, CNN, whatever the polarizing news channels are just using affirmation for their viewers.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
this, and let me bounce it off this news channel because this is what they believe in too, which helps me affirm my views instead of actually trying to get both sides, which I think that's why Rogan does a good job of. But besides that, so how do you think this deal, what do you think this deal means for Joe Rogan's podcast, moving exclusively? What does that mean exactly? So, well, I think the deal exactly said starting in September, he will be moving, he will be on Spotify, then by the end of the year, exclusively on Spotify. What does that mean?
Yeah, so basically, I guess like in the past, Joe Rogan had YouTube be like the source of truth, I guess. And it's like that is the raw, like unedited film of the Joe Rogan experience. And then you could get like audio recording of that on what do they call it? The podcast app. It might be Apple Music now, but whatever. Like
Podcast.
Apple had their own hands in that, but what they had was just the audio recording, and there were ads inserted to it after the fact. And then you could get clips basically anywhere on the internet. By going to Spotify, what's going to change is that raw source of truth is going to be Spotify instead of YouTube. Um, so the full like 3 hours without any splicing or editing or the ad injections is only going to be on Spotify from now on. But there's still going to be clips throughout the internet of either the audio itself or if Spotify does some type of like video player in the future, there will be that too. And at the end of the year, that like audio recording of the whole episode that's on the podcast app will be taken
Yeah.
away. So it's, you know, it's kind of hard to like say if this is going to be like a direct wall between JRE fans and the JRE podcast, with Spotify being that wall, because you still get the clips that you want, and a lot of people only watch the clips. But if you're like me, where you want to hear the whole thing, you got to go through Spotify.
Wait, so JRE clips will still exist on YouTube.
Yeah,
So like clips of the actual unfiltered show on Spotify will still be clipped and put on YouTube.
yeah. That's like what I've gathered from what Joe Rogan has said and like all these articles have said. And
Oh,
you know
my
that
understanding.
that could change by the end of the year.
Oh, I see. My understanding was like exclusively meaning like content will be taken down from Apple, not previous content, but future content will be taken down from those platforms.
Yeah, well, the platforms like Apple, the content they have is just the audio recording of the
Yeah.
whole thing. That won't be on Apple anymore. Like that'll be taken down.
Okay. So just
But at the end of the year,
oh, so you can only listen to it on Spotify.
you can only listen to it on Spotify or YouTube clips.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So it's like kind of complicated, but you can basically think about the Spotify thing as being the only real Joe Rogan experience forever after this.
Oh, I see.
But I heard someone say that this will be a part of like the free Spotify
Yeah.
version and you won't have to get premium, which is like nice. So it's, I don't know, I think Spotify is trying to branch out their branding a little bit and not step away from music, but like have people understand that this is like a real deal podcast thing. Which would be kind of cool because I'm really curious if they'll eventually implement a video player. So they would have like the Joe Rogan audio and video at the same time, like YouTube does. And if that happens, like, what's the future of Spotify? Like, is this going to become like some giant thing, like how YouTube is now? Is this going to change what they're all about? Like, I guess we'll wait and see. But I'm like really happy for Joe, though. What?
Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, I'm really happy for Joe, though, because if I had to guess, and there's no real concrete evidence of this, he probably had in the terms of conditions that Spotify would never be able to remove that content if somebody said something they didn't like.
Interesting. So giving him free creative control regarding anything he puts out.
Yeah, that's what I would guess he did. Because in 2018, he even said that he didn't really like Spotify, and like
Hmm.
they've reached out to him in the past and stuff, and he's like, yeah, I'm not going to move the podcast. So I would guess his decision to move over was partly because they gave him a ton of money, and partly because he's sick of YouTube censoring and he wants some type of platform that will never censor him.
Yeah, that's true. As far as I think the changes wise, like I don't. Did you first think like this might be only on premium? I think that wasn't the case because Spotify, it'll just be like ads, like with YouTube, just be ads put in place for the normal Spotify version. So it wouldn't be like the type of move Howard Stern did with radio and like
Hmm.
really serious where like you had to pay for a subscription sub. But so this is where that will be a little different. And as far as the video goes, I think they're already working towards that. And like the rumors, because
Really?
because the video is a big part of the JRE podcast. This is why I like watching it on YouTube. So if they
Yeah,
lost that, that would be a big blow. And I think they're working on that for podcasts especially.
I agree. Like, some of his episodes I'm like totally cool with just listening to, but if he has like a comedian like Joey Diaz on, what they say is so much funnier if you see their like
Yeah.
hand movements and their faces and like, sometimes he'll have in his fight companions, those guys will get up and like actually explain like certain chokes and like move around, which is,
Oh, I see.
something that the video needs to have that you can't really get just from the audio.
No, I think
So,
I agree. The video only adds for me, especially because I'm very visual. But as
yeah, for
far as
sure, me
like
too.
Spotify's move, dude, they've been making a lot of moves this last year regarding the podcasting world. Because like I've read up on them a little bit before this, like just for some research wise. But like they are now with Joe Rogan moving over, like the only place where you can actually like sell ads for podcasts, make content, tools to create their own show like Anchor, and actually have like people like Joe Rogan make exclusive deals now with the Joe Rogan deal. Because they also bought Ringer. I don't know if you're a big sports fan, like the Bill Simmons show.
Mm-mm.
They bought Ringer like later, like early 2019 as well, or sometime in 2019. But they made all these moves, so they have this one. They want to like almost gearing for a monopoly in the podcast,
Yeah,
which is
God, dude, that's crazy to think about. I didn't know about all that. Dude, these tech companies, man, they always find some way to just corner a market. So hopefully that doesn't happen because, like, you know, I would like to have other music streaming services available,
Mhm.
even though Spotify's my favorite. But, like, if they become the top dog and they own everything, that's going to piss me off.
No, true. Because then how does that make them any different than like YouTube owning all the content and like making decisions
Right.
based on censorship? But Spotify wants to do this in the podcasting space for sure. Music wise, I'm not
Yeah.
sure, but podcasting space, definitely. Like, also, the one big thing is like, maybe this is wrong, but I think Joe Rogan is arguably the biggest podcaster in the world. Correct, right?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
So, like, Spotify moving him over exclusively is like, you're not getting like the 20th best podcaster. Not like you're getting Joe Rogan. That's like the Lakers losing LeBron equivalent
Yeah.
in the
No,
NBA.
it's a big deal, man. Like even for people who listen to podcasts but not Joe Rogan experience, like all those people are still like, holy shit. Like this will definitely change some things, but um I don't know. I still think it's like good for that podcast specifically. I think if like a podcast like Congratulations with Chris D'Elia got offered the same thing, I'd be kind of butthurt because it's like that podcast doesn't work unless you're looking Chris D'Elia in the face and you get to see all of his clips, and I don't know. That would just feel weird on Spotify unless they totally changed how they do things. But
Interesting. So why Joe Rogan? Because of the censorship, it works for him for his podcast specifically.
yeah, I mean like if I knew that his podcast could get censored in any way, I would probably just stop watching. Because it's like the whole reason I watch it is like, okay, I believe this about this topic. This guest he has on believes the complete opposite. I want to hear what they have to say, not someone's interpretation of what they have to say, not an article about what they have to say. I want to hear them talk about it, right? But if I
Yeah.
know that somebody can edit it or somebody can pull it down, or somebody can splice in their own thing,
Mm-hmm.
then it's just like at that point I'll just watch the news or
No,
interviews other way.
but then like I'm trying to think like a big move like this like sends ripples across the industry, right? Because Joe Rogan
Hmm.
spends a lot of those comedians. So where does this like this leaves obviously a gap in YouTube to
Yeah,
probably
for sure.
potentially fill. Also, does this make people like Brian Callen, Chris D'Elia, other podcasters, the armchair expert, and like question their value? Like, hey, could I actually get this type of dough somewhere else with exclusive type
Dude,
of deals?
I was thinking about those guys specifically, like that, like Joe Rogan clicking us, like Brian Callen, Chris D'Elia,
Yeah,
Joey Diaz, all those guys. I don't know, man. I have no idea what to predict is going to happen with those type of guys. I think like if one guy jumped ship and went to like Spotify or Apple Music or something like Tom Segura, I'd imagine just a flood of comedians would do the same. But it
exactly.
also could be like, you know, maybe those comedians really like how easy it is to just post a video on YouTube. Um, and like they really want that YouTube demographic. Uh, like I definitely think Joe Rogan is gonna drop in listeners by going to Spotify,
Those
just because
fans.
like yeah, and not everybody has Spotify, and it's like let's be honest, not as easy to use as YouTube. Um, but like I don't know, it's hard to say with those other guys. Like Bill Burr, he could definitely be on Spotify for sure. Because like he just has like an audio thing and it's just him ranting for an hour. So I don't even think it matters where he goes because he already has his own fan base and he's established and everything. But someone like Chris D'Elia, even though he had that like awesome Netflix special that was really popular, he's
No
still
kidding.
like kind of on like the upward thing, you know? So he's still one of the comedians who's like trying to get more viewers and more cult following. But the established guys like Joe Rogan, Bill Burr, um, and dare I say Louis C.K., they don't really need any more fans, right? Like they can do whatever they want.
Oh, I see. So you think they've reached that career? So, but I don't know if I would agree with the fact like going to Spotify would deter Chris D'Elia's growth per se, because they're like podcast algorithm per se. Like I don't know, my podcast stuff is like some of the stuff that I come up with like through Spotify that some recommended for me is like amazing. But
Yeah,
but I guess what you're saying with like the stand up special, like it just differentiate between one platform because YouTube has all that
yeah,
vibe because like it's just for laugh stuff, podcasts, clips, and all that. Especially and if the video component is a little janky in the beginning, that could lead to some loss of fans.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I definitely think like Spotify, their recommendation system is way better than YouTube's. But like, I don't know, this might just be personal experience. The whole reason I even discovered Chris D'Elia was I was watching like it might have been Workaholics clips actually, but he was in some show a long time ago,
Mm-hmm.
and then it recommended another thing that he was in, and then when I watched that, then I stumbled upon his podcast. So like I wasn't
Oh,
even looking for a podcast. So in a way, he at least got like one person through YouTube being YouTube that probably wouldn't work on Spotify. But there's also like comedians that are really podcast comedians and like they have stand up on the side, but their core thing is the podcast. Like I think Brian Callen and Brendan Schnaub, like their big thing is The Fighter and the Kid. Like they're both stand ups, but I think that's like their core comedy thing.
Brendan
So I
Schaub's
thought
not a stand-up comedian. Let's be honest.
he's not a UFC fighter either. Um, yeah, but I think like for those two guys, Spotify might make more sense. Like they might actually get more followers like that. I don't
Well,
know.
I
I
guess
guess we'll have to wait and see.
the only thing is like they don't have to feel as constricted anymore because YouTube used to be the big thing, and like when someone like Joe Rogan, and like you're saying, like they're talking all the time, right? Like these guys know the ins and out of this deal. Probably Rogan's telling them what's going on, this and that. If
Yeah.
anyone can convince them to jump ship, it'd probably be Rogan. So if like this, I think the first person to jump in, like sure, the LeBron of podcasting is jumped over. But the second person following will be huge too, because that could determine a huge slew of people just going over.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, if like Bert Kreischer is like, fuck it, we're going to Spotify, that whole clique, they're all gone. Like
True.
all of them are off YouTube. But if it's like, that type of thing happens, like what does YouTube become? Like, do they lose most of their podcasts? Do celebrities just not want to even dick with YouTube anymore? Like, I guess I don't even get what YouTube is about anymore. I used to watch it for like funny videos and then skateboarding clips and a little bit of coding stuff, but now it's like I get on and without logging in, there's not any of those videos on the front page I want to watch. Like I have no idea who their target demographic is, but it's
You
like,
don't see any of your recommended stuff. Is that what you're
huh?
saying? Like recommended stuff for you is nothing near what it needs to be? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying like if I wasn't logged in and I was on
Oh, okay.
YouTube, the
Uh,
like trending stuff and recommended for everybody videos, I'm like, dude, what the hell? I wouldn't watch any of this shit. Like I don't know who their target demographic is. It's just weird now.
oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I guess with the monopoly of that Spotify's trying to have over the podcasting world is the problem with that. Could this be a problem? Like with the web boom in 2001, not to get
Hmm.
too technical, but like when web behavior started being tracked or checked much more, like the way you browse your data, which messaging apps you use, and all that shit for ad behavioral targeting. Like, could this be the case? Depending if podcasts do take control, like Spotify does have a monopoly over podcasting, then they could target like specific users for certain types of ads. Which
Yeah.
again, because podcasting is like people have some niche taste in this. Like Call Her Daddy, I don't know if you heard that podcast with like two girls talk about their sex life in New York, basically.
Oh,
And it's
okay.
really, like
Yeah.
dirty or raunchy, right? Like people
Yeah.
might not want to be too keen about how, or like true crime stuff, or like murder stuff. Like there's just categories where like it's a little more sensitive. So
Hmm.
could there be ads in that realm, and how would that look like? And would that be
Oh,
problematic as a user for you?
100% that is going to happen. Like there's no doubt in my mind. Um, I don't think that would really bother me per se because I already know where that's happening elsewhere. Like even if like you think about Google search, like that's already an AI trying to learn everything about you so
Uh,
that it can get you to see what you want to see. And then they plug in ads to that so you can get better recommendations of what to buy. But like, yeah, like okay, so let's think about Google search for a second. If I searched the term Thor and I lived in America and this was like 2 days after Infinity Wars came out, Google search would like guess that I'm talking about Thor from the Thor like Marvel movies.
mhm.
But if I was someone who lived in Norway and those movies have already been done for a long time,
True.
it would probably show me results on the like mythology Thor.
Norse mythology, like go
Yeah,
down.
exactly. So like it has to like factor in a ton of information about you to be able to get you to see what you want to see when you Google search. Um, and like how it does it is it takes what it knows about you and it finds other users who are similar to you.
Mhm.
And then by doing that, you kind of get put in this community, and then it knows what that community wants to see and buy and watch and all that. And that's like how Netflix recommends movies. Like if you watch
Mhm.
Family Guy and South Park and Simpsons, and I watch those three, but then you watch that 70s show and I haven't seen it, it's going to recommend that 70s show. And so if you give it so much data, it's going to recommend stuff so well that you're going to think it's reading your mind. But really, it's just putting you in a category and researching everything about the people in that category, which is
Yeah.
really cool for things like Spotify because it can tell you what kind of music you would like.
True. I do
But
like.
it's really dangerous for things like Google search because if I told you like, I don't know, Donald Trump had a sex scandal and you Googled Donald Trump's sex scandal, depending on your user data, you're going to see different news sources at the very front than somebody else would. So in a way, this AI that we've been training for so long, you know, it's just trying to figure out what you want to see and what things you want to buy, like to insanely specific details. So I would think Spotify would be stupid to not implement the same type of thing because it works really well. But like from an ethical standpoint, I don't know. I think like attaching all these artificial intelligences to every piece of data so we can sell better ads is just annoying and exhausting, and it touches a lot of things that you probably wouldn't think about.
Oh, true. And ads do run the world, but that's like I don't know. I guess there's a lot of unknowns with this, like what it might look like, especially. I'm curious when September hits around, like what exactly the exclusivity of this deal with Rogan. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how the deals would look or the clips and everything on YouTube because, and also I'm assuming like when people move over to Spotify and download this app, obviously their downloads are going up, their stock went up quite a bit, like their
Oh
market
yeah.
cap. Like I would have loved to buy right before Joe Rogan announced that, but the market cap
Yeah. I wish I would have known.
billions of dollars. I
Yeah.
wonder if their click knew, like Chris D'Elia and them, and they bought a bunch of Spotify, before that went public.
Dude, they
That
probably did, because I was watching The Fighter and the Kid the other day. Well, not the whole podcast, but a clip of it.
it's hard to watch.
And this was like, yeah, this was like before they ballparked that it was $100 million. I still don't know if they confirmed that that's the amount or not. But Brendan Schnaub had said, yeah, Rogan told us what that number was. And we're not going to say it on here, but all we're going to say is whatever number you heard, that's not true. So, like, I know that they had information about it before everybody else. So that definitely could have happened. They just bought a ton of stock right before the deal hit the news.
That's interesting to think about. That'd be like
Yeah.
insider trading almost. So I don't know if like where does that almost
Yeah.
go?
Dude, I don't know. That's always something I'd want to learn more about, insider trading. Like, what actually would get you in trouble and what is just like you got lucky? Like, could Brendan Schnaub have gotten in trouble if he bought a bunch of stock? Like, is that insider trading or is that just similar to insider trading, you know?
Sure, because Rogan probably has some part of his contract that's like the NDA regarding like how much he could disclose and whatnot. Because like him disclosing to his friends is probably still problematic to some degree of his contract, right?
Yeah.
Schaub wouldn't have talked about it live if it wasn't. Because when that
Well,
becomes
it's
public,
also Schaub, so who the hell knows?
oh, true.
But they might have like, I don't know. I don't know when exactly in the timeline this clip came out. Because it could have been right after it went public, then
Oh,
Joe called them, and then they said it. I don't know. And we probably won't ever know, but I guess
interesting.
we'll just see what happens. I'm just like happy about it because like I already use Spotify, so
Yeah, true.
won't
I'm
change my life a whole much.
same. I'm a premium fan, and I'm excited for the video component. So, all right, Michael, as we're approaching the end of the conversation, give me a rating out of 10 for this move for Joe Rogan, and then give me a rating out of 10 for Spotify.
Damn. I'm gonna give Joe an 8 out of 10 because he
We're doing
definitely
this.
he took some dents from his fans for this one. But I think he did the smart move for him. I'm gonna give Spotify a 10 because I think the amount of money they gave him already got paid back in stocks. So, and now they have all the power. And now people are talking about Spotify again. So
I
hopefully
agree.
they'll shut that Apple Music shit down. Not a fan.
Same. Spotify, way better. I
Yeah.
agree with Spotify killed it. Like, they won this deal. I mean, we're talking about the number one podcaster in the world. I'm just curious to see how this will play out, especially the video component.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I'm super hyped.
And then as far as the next person to jump ship, who do you think it'll be and why? A bold prediction.
I think it would probably be Brian Callen and Brendan Schnaub because you don't really need the video aspect for their podcast. And they're such good friends with Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's a pretty big bird in your ear. I don't know. I think it would make sense for them. Plus, like, a lot of their podcasts are just about UFC stuff, so they could do what Joe Rogan did, where they make specific UFC episodes And, you know, they could make a whole Spotify like channel for specifically that.
Oh, kind of like they had with Fox back in the day.
Yeah.
Interesting. I like that, but I also think it'll be one of his clicks. I don't know which one, like Segura, Bart Crasher in them, or this one.
I think that's a good guess too, man.
It'll be a comedian though, I think.
Oh, for sure.
He'll be like, "Oh my god, I'm getting too censored for the shit I'm saying." As I guess we progress, and then he might jump ship to. It doesn't have to be Spotify, but it might be someone. But might be like
Yeah.
exclusive type of deal.
Yeah. No, I definitely think people are going to stop or start hopping off YouTube for like monetary deals with other places for the sake of like ensuring no censorship.
I guess time will tell. All
Time
right,
will
Michael,
tell.
my dude, thank you so much for coming on. Any other final thoughts? And especially a huge shout out to Michael because he doesn't use any of this fucking social media shit. I had to convince him to download Instagram.
Yeah.
Back.
I'm like the only like software dev on the planet who doesn't know how to work Instagram. But yeah, dude, thank you so much for having me on. This is really cool. I love this podcast, bro.
Dude, I
see a
love
bright
it.
future. Bright future.
Thank you so much.
Future's
Joe Rogan
bright.
inspired me. Working towards that exclusive Spotify deal, baby.
Keep going. All right, peace out, man.
All right, thank you, Michael. Bye. All right, well, that was episode 9. I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation with Michael Condon. He's a good friend of mine, good coworker. And we talked a lot of interesting things today. As you can tell, I'll have this episode out on IGTV, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Tune in if you haven't. And as always, let me know in the comments if there's something you liked or disliked, or if you want to be a guest. Thank you all. Have a good night.